the focus required, it quiets my mind. My mind is never quiet.
Okay.
Except when I'm diving. And the more demanding the dive, the more you have to be in the moment. That's honestly what is incredible to me.
Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. Originally from Finland, Arya Hintsala made a quick detour to Bali while en route to Australia. What began as a surf vacation led her to enroll in an open water course. After a few skills, she knew this was something she needed to pursue. Leaving her job at the foreign ministry, she quickly immersed herself in this newfound passion, traveling to different destinations, teaching and guiding. The complexity, skill, and challenging aspect of technical diving appealed to her, so naturally she found her way to the Yucatan in search of a higher level of training. Here, she would be introduced to Natalie, Gibb, and Under the Jungle, and once again, her path would be altered. Please enjoy. So, Arya, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. Yeah, very good.
You went diving, all that good stuff?
Yes, we did go diving, you and I. Fun diving.
Where did we go?
We went to a place called Corazon del Paraíso. It is a beautiful, beautiful cenote south of Tulum here in Mexico.
Okay. There was a lot of snorkelers there. Tons.
So many.
Yeah, tons. I think, to be honest, that was probably the most snorkelers anywhere that we've been.
Yeah, so this is a very popular snorkeling spot. It is the weekend. It is a Sunday, so it will happen. I try and be a nice human-friendly person and smile at everyone and not scowl when snorkelers are around. But I do also try to avoid going to these places on the weekend.
Yes, it was a very, very lovely place. I am still early on in my journey, but we'll talk about that later. We'll start out with an easy question. Tell me how and why you became scuba certified. Tell me about that first breath underwater, the what and the how led to that. What and how led to that moment. Did I say that right? I think so.
I did understand the question, so. Yes, okay, so diving was never on my radar at all. And I just kind of stumbled upon it. So me and my ex, we were on our way to Australia.
Where are you from again?
Finland. Yeah. So we are on our way to Australia, starting our working holiday visa, 1 year in Oz, yay. And he wanted to stop for a vacation in Bali. And my response initially was like, well, it's like we're already going on a vacation. It's in the name. It's a working holiday. But whatever. So we go to Bali. And then over there, because at the time I was a mediocre surfer, at best, I guess, that's what I wanted to do. I'm a very single-minded person. I find something I like, and that's all I want to do, and everything else is a waste of time.
Did you learn to surf back home?
No.
Where'd you learn to surf?
I think I first tried it in Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
Portugal?
Oh.
Uncertain.
Okay.
It's another life now. It seems so far away.
That's for the surfing podcast. We're here for
scuba. Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. So we go to Bali, right? And I just wanted to go surfing every day because it's an iconic surf spot and it's super cool and everything else is a waste of time. And so one day we are on our way to the beach with our boards on the scooter riding along, and you see some sort of like ad somewhere on the side of the road for an open water course. And it's like, oh, hey, look at that, like Bali, oh, so cheap, once in a lifetime, how cool. And it's like, 3 days, really? What a waste of time. But in a relationship, you must make compromises, and so I did. And in true backpacker fashion, we sign up for this course that starts the next day. The instructor scootered over with an iPad, and in the evening, we watched some videos, did some theory, and were also so very well prepared for the course next morning. So we rock up, and we just looked at the gear as you do, right? And then get in the pool, It was 2 guys, 2 other backpackers, and us. I remember kneeling in the pool. We are doing mass clearing or something. And I was just like, this is incredible. This is the best thing. This is the coolest thing I have ever done in my life. Yes, the rest is history, as they say.
Okay. What part of Bali? Just curious.
We were staying in Seminyak at the time.
The last time I was there, I stayed in... Well, no, not the last time. A few times ago, I was in Chenigan, which is in between Nusa Penida and Lambagan, and there seemed to be quite a little popular surf spot there. So I don't know if you ever got there to go do any surfing.
We went to... What's the peninsula, like, on the tip of... On the eastern... Like where you have the big waves. See, this is how far removed from my life.
Well, I know there's like
now.
Lambagan, Chenigan, Nusa Penida, and then Lombok.
Yeah, no, it's none of these. No, it will come to me.
No.
Funnily enough, I ended up working in Ahmed later on.
Oh, okay.
But
well, so I'm
later.
Curious. So I'm assuming plans went on the working holiday. So you loved it, that first breath, that first mask skill under the pool. You were like, man, this is amazing. Did you know at that point, like, you wanted to pursue it? Did you even know how to pursue it? Or was it just, I like this for the moment, I'm going to enjoy it? Like, at what point do you remember when you're like, let's continue down this path?
Yeah, okay. So then the story continues, right? So we are on our way to Oz. It's a very, very long story, but basically I had just left my job at the foreign ministry, and I was starting out on that path. What I wanted to do was become a diplomat, or I wanted to work as a legal advisor for the foreign ministry, and I was like, kind of getting my foot in the door, as they say, and but Australia had long been a dream of mine. And long story short, we just ended up making it work then. But at the same time, I'm like, shit, like if I go and I have a gap of like a year or 2 years in my resume, everybody's going to be so far ahead. Like, how will I ever get back to that, right? And so I was thinking in Oz, I would do something, in related to that field. I would try and find some work with an NGO, in human rights or whatever, something relevant. And then we do this course, and I was like, oh, shit, that's what I'm going to do. No relevance whatsoever, but so amazing. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I am going to become a scuba instructor. And that's what I did. Obviously, you then go on this path, you do advanced, and I'm not sure actually what things are politically correct to say and what not, but in Oz, basically it's free labor, right? Like, you'll have backpackers come in, and dive shops, they do this, like, dive master internship. You get accommodation and food, and you work, right? Like,
I think that's kind of all over the dive.
I mean, it's the dive industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I was looking into that, because it's like, well, I'm not spending any money. I'm not making any money, but oh well, it's like, this is what we budgeted for anyway. So then I just looked around for a spot and found one and did my dive masters, and then off I went to the Great Barrier Reef, where I did my instructor training eventually, and then ended up working there as well.
Oh, okay. You know what? That's a funny conversation that I feel like I should have at some point. Because it's, because I feel like a lot of people are very much the same way when you first get into this. There's that feeling of, oh, I can do this. I'll give the free work. I'll put the work in to do it, and then just kind of see what happens. And you're very happy to do it until, like, there's always like a turning point at some point where you're like,
Yeah, I think in certain parts of the world, in the recreational side of things, you're just another body, right? Like, you get churned up and they use you up, so to speak, right? Like, you're there for a year, 2 years, until you're like so fed up with the DSDs and all the things, and then they just move along with life and they go back to real life, right?
Yeah.
They go back to their jobs or whatever they had before, which is kind of sad. I mean, you see it all over and over again in conversations and, in social media. Someone's like, oh, I want to leave my job and I want to become a dive instructor, and then or like work as a dive master, and then there's a gazillion people who are like, oh, don't you dare, because like you with your safety net, like you are the reason why we are paid like nothing.
Oh yeah, and it's a bummer, because as soon as that person is fed up, there's somebody right behind him whose eyes are wide and they're ready to give that year or two, right? And that's why that's such a good conversation to have. I mean, I know it's been probably gone over and over and over in the industry between many, however many. I'm sure the conversation's been had many times, but there's no matter what, and because we were all there, right? Like we're all like, he doesn't want to work for you, I'll work for you.
Yeah,
I'll work for you free. What do you need me to do? You're gonna give me free air, free gas? What? Let's do it.
Not even nitrox, air.
Yeah, I know, right? It's sad, and then you start learning, and then So, instructor in the Great Barrier Reef. Tell me about the diving in the Great Barrier Reef. It's very well known. I have seen many things. I eventually would like to get out there. I know there's, depending on who you talk to, 20 years ago it was a lot better, 30 years ago it was a lot better.
Isn't that for everything?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But just tell me a little bit about the diving and your work experience, or not experience, but your time working in the Great Barrier Reef.
So that was obviously a long time ago now. Seems like forever ago.
It was better back then, right?
Obviously. I do remember when I moved on from Australia, there was one of the big bleaching events happened afterwards, and then there was discussion about regeneration and like the reef bouncing back. What I remember at the time, I mean, I was new, right? Like I didn't know anything. It was spectacular. I mean, I remember seeing a lionfish for the first time, being like, oh my God. And then you go to the Caribbean and they're like, all right, kill him. So, I remember it being amazing and beautiful. And I was very lucky to get to go up to the Ribbon Reefs up north, to Cod Hall and like Steve's Bommy and all of those. I mean, they're amazing. It's beautiful. I did spend a lot of time on the Jongala, which is a shipwreck. I used to do the history talk on the boat. It was amazing. I have since forgotten it, obviously, but it was sunk like 100 plus years ago. Now it's more like an artificial reef, and it's incredible. Depending on the time of year, you can see manta rays. I mean, there's sharks all the time, bull sharks, and you'll hear whale song when it's whale migration season. And I've seen a humpback whale, a mother and a calf in the water right there on our safety stop coming out from the wreck. Like that was starting off like this. You get very spoiled.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. No, that sounds amazing. So you're an instructor. At what point, because I know for a lot of people, you become an instructor and that's kind of, I don't want to say the plateau, but people are like, okay, I've reached the top tier, right? Like that is a feeling that some people get. And at what point were you like, there's more? Because there's obviously, you've went further with beyond the recreational instructor in your own diving. When did you start chasing that path?
So, first of all, I always wanted to travel. Those were the two things I wanted to do in life. I loved the law and traveling. I know, it's so funny. So that's why I wanted to become a diplomat, right? And that's why I pursued that course first. So in the beginning, I saw it as a good way to travel, right? Like work in Australia for a couple of years and then go somewhere else and somewhere else. And I did that for a little while. However, I was never happy in the recreational industry because, as you know, I am not a relaxed person at all.
I have not noticed that.
I am not chill. There is no like island time. Oh my God, shoot me now. So the recreational, like whatever, I don't want to be that person. I don't want, like, I feel like saying that I don't want to somehow like make it sound less, because diving is not rocket science, and anybody can be a good diver regardless of whether you're classed as this or that, right? I really don't like that kind of separation. However, you know, like the liveaboards and like there's, you know, most people over there or in Indonesia where I used to work, there was backpackers, and then they come and go and they dive a couple of times a year. So it's a very different mindset in a way, and it just never, I don't know, I was never happy with this. I was never happy having to teach, I don't know, a 3 or 4 day course and be like, do this, like right now, right, get it done, no matter what, it doesn't matter. Okay, so they're not gonna die, great, certify them, you know, like it was never my thing, and I was just not happy. But at the same time, I just didn't know what was the alternative until I don't know. Then I learned about, you know, like trimix and all these things, and I was like, oh, that's cool. It seems to require some discipline.
Yeah.
And I don't know, went towards it because it sounded cool.
And you did this still in Australia?
No,
or? Okay.
From Australia, I went to Vanuatu. I was there for a while. I went to Indonesia, and that's where I did my initial technical training.
Oh, okay. And so that was like, I'm sure, very welcoming, as you were saying at the time, to get into this higher level, this higher discipline. How was that first experience?
I mean, I remember being very overwhelmed. I do remember being very annoyed with the theory part because the materials were perhaps not the greatest, and my instructor was more interested in the practical part of it. So I feel like knowledge development was lacking somewhat. But yeah, it was cool. I don't know. I survived.
Did you know at that point, like, this is something I want to explore more, or was it kind of?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, okay.
Yeah. No, I was done with I cannot. I was just bored, honestly, and I needed a challenge. So it was a natural progression in that way.
Okay. Yeah. I'm curious to know, I know like a lot of people, when they start going into, well, actually, I don't know. I don't want to say a lot of people, but when you start going into that technical side of it, you know, there's like, okay, well, I need, instead of 1 tank, I need 2. Most people, I want to say, kind of go down the back mount doubles route, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not so much anymore. I don't really know. I'm wondering, I'd be curious to know. I'm sure there's a poll out there on how many people started side mount as opposed to back mount doubles, because it is, I feel like, equally as popular and offered throughout the industry. But how was it the first time? Like, okay, I need to do 2 tanks on the back, have a stage. How did you find eventually your way to side mount diving?
Well, yeah. So in Indonesia, it was back mounted doubles. I did training all the way to open circuit trimix, which is like hypoxic trimix, which is insane, right, in terms of cost. What was I thinking? That's what I did at the time. So then I have then moved on. I'm working in Grand Cayman because, once again, I'm traveling, right? So I wanted to see the Caribbean. And I was looking at places. This was in Indo. And I'm like, okay, where can I go? Like, I want to do more tech, so there's this and that. And I ended up in Cayman through a mutual friend of the owner of the shop where I worked then, later. We had a mutual friend who we both worked with in Australia. It's funny, like, the industry is, the world is so small.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, so what's close here? What should I do? What's the next step? What is the next course I can take? And well, there's Mexico right there. Let's go cave diving. I did the side mount course in preparation for cave in Cayman. Yeah, that is correct.
Had you been in an overhead environment prior to Mexico?
No, just like soft overhead, like Pico, okay. But that's it.
Yeah. So how did you feel about, like, obviously something drew you to Mexico, but like, how was that feeling being like, I'm going to go and do a actual cave overhead?
For me, it's just about the finesse and the skills and like the challenge, right? And based on what I had seen and heard, it seemed like cave divers have all of this. They have the finesse, they have the skills, right? And, I considered myself, a decent diver coming here and was very much humbled by the environment and the training. But yeah, I remember when I initially contacted Natalie at Under the Jungle. I did all of my initial cave training with her. And she was like, have you ever done a cavern? Have you ever been in a cavern? I'm like, nah, never seen them. She's like, maybe, who knows? Maybe you don't like it. I'm like, don't you worry. It will be fine. So yeah, I booked 2 weeks of training, or like 14 days or something, because it's all the time I had off.
What was the course? It was just a cavern course?
I did cavern in Trumful.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember that initial exchange of like, okay, so maybe you won't like it. And it's basically, you are booking 14 days of training, and then we see how we go. You might be intro at the end, you might be full cave. So it's like, don't worry, I'm in it to be a better diver.
You were determined.
Yeah, I just wanted the challenge. And then I came here and we go to Ponderosa.
That was your first one? That was the first place?
Yes. I went diving with Nick, who you also know, who is no longer working with us here. But we went to Ponderosa, and he took me on my first ever cavern dive.
Back mount doubles, or?
No, I was in side mount.
Oh, yeah, because you did the side mount class.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and off we go, looking at the light beams. I was like, this is the most spectacular thing I have ever seen in my life.
Okay. Where were the skills at that point? Were they where you wanted it to be?
Obviously not. They are never where you want them to be. You can always be better. Yeah, I just remember thinking, oh shit, this is like next level, right?
So you came here for 2 weeks on vacation, met Natalie, was introduced to Under the Jungle, started diving in the caves. At what point were you like, this is where I need to go, this is where I need to be?
Oh, it's a very, very coincidental story. So I finished my training and it was great fun, but this was not, I had a job. So I went back to my job, and there I am in Grand Cayman, and we had renewed, and I had promised to stay for another, I think I had like a year and a half left on my work visa. I was looking to go back to Europe, actually, just to be closer to my mum, who is not getting any younger. So I was thinking it would be better if I was in Malta or somewhere like this, closer to her. Definitely not in Mexico. Then COVID hit, and the island shut down, and I go back home. I chilled there for a while, and then in the summer, this is the first time, actually, COVID times, when I went diving in Finland.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Before that, everybody would always ask me, like, oh, you started diving in Finland. What's that like? I'm like, I don't freaking know. Like, it's cold and miserable, I bet. Like, who would want to dive in Finland? And looking back at it now, I'm just like, oh, God, I missed so much.
Yeah, there's always amazing stuff in your own backyard. Well, tell me, before we get back to Mexico, tell me a little bit about the diving in Finland, that first dive that you did there.
I think the first one they wanted to check me out, obviously. Some, like, useless tropical diver.
And you'd never done cold water diving before?
No, I had, actually. I went to God's Pocket.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's like top 3 places.
That's on my destination for next year.
It's incredible. It's so, so beautiful. Yeah, I had that, but that was it. Mostly just tropics. Yeah, we went to this random, it's not even a lake, like this silty pit somewhere. And we swam around, nothing to see, a fish. But the people were nice. It was fun. And then eventually, they were comfortable enough to take me out on the boat, and we went wreck diving. And yes, the Baltic wrecks, they're incredible. So, so beautiful. It is cold and dark. You go there and you're like, ooh, shit. Like 20 meters of water is very different when it's 4 degrees and it's pitch black. So it took some time to be comfortable. But yeah, the wrecks are really well preserved. There's a good variety of them. It's really, really cool. And then eventually I obviously dived in the mines as well. And they keep me just going back there.
How eventually did you make your way back to the Yucatan?
So there I am. I'm having the greatest time of my life, actually, during COVID. We went cross-country skiing. Like, this is stuff I hadn't done in years.
Yeah.
And I saw more of Finland than I ever had before. And it was really cool because one of my main goals in life was to get away from Finland as far away as possible. And having achieved that, it was nice to go back because you know that you're not stuck there. So you appreciate everything that you see there. Anyway, so we did a bunch of hiking and all these things, and I'm diving there. But eventually, it gets cold and dreary, as it does in Finland. And I was like, yeah, this is no longer fun. What shall I do? Because I'm still waiting for the island to reopen. I still had a year left on the work visa. I'm not a person who is going to be like, hey, I'm going to come back and then just, leave. So I'm waiting. And I have some savings because I had a plan to go scout on Malta or whatever after the 2-year stint in Cayman. So what to do while I wait? And I always planned to go back to Mexico, do some more training, do some fun diving. So that's what I did. I came here to chill and dive for a month, do some training, and look at some more caves. I booked some more training with Natalie. I think originally I planned to stay for a month, and then it became 2 months and 3 months, and I'm just like, I'm waiting. The island's not reopening. Cayman Islands, they had one of the longest lockdowns in the world. It was really, really, really bad for the tourism over there. But yeah, anyway, so then Nat kind of, she basically kept being like, you should come work for me. And I was like, thank you, but I already have a job. And then eventually I ran out of money, and I was like, you know what, I should come work for you. But she did plant the idea in my head, and I was like, well, maybe. And then somehow, I don't know what, like 4 years later, here I am. It's crazy. And I've stopped making plans because this was never in the cards for me. It was never in my plans.
So I feel that, like, I've said my story a few times on the podcast, but I'll be honest. When I first heard of caves, I was like, that's something that's cool. It's something I'm not really interested in. I like the open ocean, right? Then I took a trip to Mexico, came down here, did some caverns. I didn't even know there was a difference between caverns and caves or whatever. I was just like, I'm going down to the cenotes, from Texas. And I came down here, and that was actually the first time I saw an actual side mount diver. I was just like, man, that looks so cool. And then you go into the cavern, you're like, holy cow, this is absolutely amazing. So I feel like for the listeners out there that have been in the cavern zone or the caves, like, it's very easy to explain. But for people that don't know, what drew you to caves? Like, what draws you to a cave? Like, why do you want to go into a cave?
They're spectacularly beautiful. It's like you go to the mountains, right? And you marvel at this incredible thing that has somehow come to be, right? And you're so small, and it's just so gorgeous. But that's not why I dive caves. It's because of the control and the finesse and like everything that is required. You have to be better every time. You have to be better. You can't just swim around. It requires the planning and the control and the discipline. And I don't know, somehow the focus required, it quiets my mind. My mind is never quiet.
Okay.
Except when I'm diving. And the more demanding the dive, the more you have to be in the moment. That's honestly what is incredible to me.
I met you, 2 years ago? I came down for a side mount course, 2022. I came down for a side mount course.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
So it was quite funny because at first, I'll be honest, I was like, I don't know if I got paired up with the right instructor. I'll be honest because...
Oh, cool. Why?
No, I have a slower pace than most people, right? And I feel like your pace is a little bit more like, okay, let's get things done. Not in a bad way or anything. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that I really, really, really enjoyed about the class, the side mount class that I took with you, is that I was like, okay, you kind of put me, like you challenged me a little bit, and I actually really enjoyed that, to the point where I actually have said I literally probably put you up as like one of my top instructors that I ever worked with, so thank you. And when I knew that I wanted to start my overhead training, I knew, like, I was like, okay, the first person I'm going to reach out to is Arya. So thank you very much. And this has been absolutely amazing. There's been challenging moments.
Yeah, I mean, it's super rewarding for me to see the progression. That's why I do it. All right. So thank you.
So tell me a little bit about when you first started. So you obviously were familiar with the Under the Jungle family. Tell me about when you first started working here. Like, how was that whole experience?
Obviously, I was terrified, because that's how I always am when I start somewhere new. Is, am I good enough? And like all these things. I think very quickly I felt at home, and I felt very comfortable at Under the Jungle, because Natalie and Vincent, they have the same approach and the same mindset. Like, they don't want to half-ass it, you know? And I finally found a place where you actually get to make people better, you know, make better divers. And I was like, finally, there's somewhere where you're not like, all right, get this done in 4 days and all these things. So while it was obviously a big challenge for me, and I was nervous for sure in the beginning, it felt like home very quickly.
So you started at, I keep wanting to say UTJ, Under the Jungle. You started working here as a, like, how was your professional development on top of your personal development? How's that been going since you've been working here?
So obviously in the beginning, I was guiding Cameron tours, I was guiding certified cave divers pretty quickly. Afterwards, I started training with Vincent to become a side mount instructor. And obviously the goal eventually is to become a full cave instructor. We started on that path with side mount a few years ago now, right? And here I am teaching intro at the moment. It has been very, very rewarding. It's super challenging. I don't know, it's a gift that keeps on giving, right? Because the thing is, like, I know I'm full of, I have all the cliches. No, but like, with the places where I worked before, I was there for a year or 2 years. And it was mostly because I just got bored. There was nothing else left, right? It's just like, okay, done with that. I've seen all of this. Moving on. And here I am. And there's still so many challenging things, and there's still so much room to grow here. I find that obviously very rewarding, and working towards the next goal, right? Yeah.
No, for sure. There's always that next goal. Do you have any big highlight moments since you started working at Under the Jungle?
Obviously, my whole time at Under the Jungle. Yeah.
And then when I started training there, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Meeting you and training you for the first time, that definitely stands out in my memory. Having said that, honestly, that's it though. I have immensely enjoyed each and every course I have taught here. That's what brings me joy and why I am happy doing what I do. It's so rewarding to see people's progression as a diver, right? It's amazing. And I mean, the people I have met and the cool stuff that I have gotten to do because I work for Natalie and Vincent at Under the Jungle. I mean, all of these opportunities, I owe everything to them, right? For instance, a year and a half ago now, it was crazy, because I was going to say last November or October, but no, it was the year before. We did safety for diving into the darkness, which is a documentary about Jill Heinerth. So the crew came down here for a month to filming for the documentary, and we got to be part of it. It was super, super fun. Yeah, now obviously it's amazing because you get to see it come out. Having played a part in this inspirational documentary is pretty cool. And meeting people like Jill Heinerth, who is one of the kindest human beings I have ever met in my life. She had time for anybody asking her any sort of question. I hope to have some of that. Like, I just aspire to be a little bit more like Jill in that way, honestly.
Okay, so you have a part in the film. You were featured in the film.
Potentially, but mostly we were just in the darkness, making sure that everyone was safe. But yeah, there might be something.
Have you ever before worked on a project, anything like a project like that, like a film type environment or crew, or not film crew, film environment, film set? Actually, I don't even know what you would call it, but just like a project, anything like that. Have you ever done anything like that before?
I feel like I would know if I had, right? Yeah. No, we had some cool stuff. We had some science projects and some like underwater communications things that were tested while I was in Grand Cayman, and we were doing that, but nothing like this before. No, I believe not. I would know, right?
Can you tell me just a little bit about like what you were doing and like how was it? Like, was it overwhelming? Was it like a huge project? For the filming?
No, it was super fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty incredible what they got done with such a small crew. It was 2 camera operators and Nays, the director, and Jill, obviously, the rest of us minions running around carrying tanks. They in the afternoons they would go off and plan for the next day and set the scenes, and then they would rock up in the morning and we would go through the plan for the day, and I don't know, you go diving, right? It's the same, right? It's same but different, no?
I feel that there's probably a little bit more pressure than, hey, we're just going diving today, because, you know, you have a whole, like a film crew, and then if everybody doesn't play their role correctly, then the whole shot is kind of, I just feel it would be a little bit more pressure than, hey, we're just going diving.
So obviously as the safety divers, we don't and cannot feel that pressure, right? Our job is to make sure that that doesn't interfere with people being safe in the water. And I think the whole crew was very good about this, and they had a very clear understanding of, you know what, everybody's safety is paramount. If it means that we don't get this shot today, then it is what it is. And that's how it's supposed to be. Yeah. Right?
I almost want to go into that a little bit more. As a safety diver, it's like we're here to do a job. It's like a whole mindset thing, right? Like it's like you almost got to turn off that emotion.
What do you mean, turn off that?
Like if you're feeling pressure, you're going to feel pressure, right? Like you can't just say, like the way that you answered it, you're like, oh, you can't, like you're here to...
I see. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I now see where you're going with
so
this.
it's not like, I mean, some people can just turn it off, right? Like they can just be like, okay, boom, we're not doing this right now.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. That's exactly who I am as a person in general, in life, right? Like, people get more nervous, I get more calm. I am, like, nervous in the weirdest situations, but, like, when it's serious and when I see that other people are feeling pressure, that's kind of what calms me down, weirdly. And, you know, famously, people in Finland, we are very... we don't express or feel emotions as acutely, perhaps, as other nationalities.
Is this a known thing?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. No, I learned how to smile when I left Finland. Not really though, but kind of, yeah. But it's funny because it's true. Anyway, yeah, no, it's just that's how I am. I
would assume there has to be some challenges being a woman teaching in, I don't know, how does that, let me rephrase this question. So, okay, perfect example. And I had spoke to you about this earlier when...
Yeah, you should really give the context.
Yeah, so it's
so funny.
So, as you're going through training, you're going through skills, and you know, one of it is the zero visibility, touch contact, exiting the cave, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, I did feel a little bit weird at times because I'm like, okay, it's zero viz. I'm just reaching out into the dark, right? I'm just reaching out, like as a man, I don't want to, it just feels weird reaching out into the dark knowing I need to grab something. Okay, here's, that's why I'd always try to like grab the fin. Okay, here's here's the knee. Let's go, right? So I would assume that can create an awkward situation at times. Do you understand where I'm kind of going with that, though?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
It's just so funny to me because so we had this conversation already, right, in the parking lot one day, and I remember you're like, all right, so man, can I ask you a weird question? It's like, it's totally fine if you don't answer. I'm like, okay, I don't know where it's, and then you start with as a woman. And I was expecting you to ask about attitudes or something like this, right? It's like, I don't know, to me, I'm at this level. Come on. We're training for serviceability. Like, what's going to happen? Just find the goddamn knee. Like, really. Like, calm down. At least for me, I don't even see how I cannot it was just like how does I just did not see that coming at all. So honestly, but then again, like if you look at, I remember when I did my instructor training, or like I did my IE and IDC, right? And they're like, oh, okay, so now it is very important when it's a male instructor and you're helping the student. If it's a female, you can't grab the BCD from the shoulder or something.
Oh yeah, you have to be aware.
Shit. Yeah, no, they say you cannot grab from the like the clip, where you clip
the sternum, the chest clip.
Thank you. Yes. You have to like grab from the shoulder because otherwise it can be construed otherwise, and I mean I see that like it's a bit different though if you have somebody like half naked in a bikini basically, right? A string bikini or something. I'm just exaggerating for dramatic effect here.
They don't train in caves that way.
A cave bikini has been a thing during Science Week, I hear, but that's not my story to tell. But yeah, I'm wearing a dry suit. Come on, like, and it's completely different. Like there is no 0 to hero like backpacker. Like I'm a male model scuba instructor being like, yo, may I help you with your buoyancy? Right? It's a bit different, no?
I feel like you just described so many.
But in terms of attitudes, of course there's attitudes, right? Like in Australia, it would be like, in some parts of the world, you encounter this more than in others, arguably, I think. But over there, it would be like, yo, Mike, go drive the tender. And like, hey, sweetheart, would you do this or that, right? And it's just like, I am not important enough to have a name. And Mike is going to go off and drive the boat or something, right? And then there's times where I'll be teaching a rebreather class or something, and some random passerby is going to go talk to my male student because of course he is the one who knows best. But at this point, it's just you just have to have a sense of humor about it. I know what I know. I think that I am a fairly good instructor, and I'm happy with this, and if that's not enough, then it's not really like I don't care, right? Is the point here? Yeah. No, it's just always it was just like it was like I said, it was just very funny because in the moment I'm just like, and obviously you can't see me out there right now, but I'm just like I need to reach out, but I just don't want to. Yeah, it just felt kind of weird at a moment. Let me ask you this other question though. For a moment, the way that I wanted to ask the question is, being a woman in a male-dominated industry. But I don't even know. I want to say that I feel like it's not so much like that anymore. Do you think it still is? Like, I think that there is a lot of... I just feel like there's a lot of prominent women in the industry. Yeah.
That probably are even... I don't want to say outnumbering the male numbers in the industry, but I don't want to say like being a male-dominated industry because I feel like there's a lot of women in the industry who have made names for themselves, who are making names for themselves. They're doing incredible things. So I was that's why I was it was hard for me to find the way to word that question. I was going to say, do you feel the same way that there's a lot of women coming up and doing these amazing things? Like Jill, for example, but she's been doing it for years.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, there is men and women who have been doing this for years, right? Like, I am the wrong person to be asking this question. In Mexico, in this area, for instance, there is a lot of female instructors, great instructors. I have met many good male and female instructors. I'm not the person to speak to this because it's just not something that, it's not on my radar as much, honestly. I do my thing.
So you eventually became overhead certified. Obviously you became overhead certified and then eventually ended up making your way back to the mines over in Europe or Finland or where?
Finland.
Yeah, do you want to tell me about the diving there and what that's all about?
Yes. So since COVID, I have been going back every summer to Finland and doing some diving there, and I've obviously gotten to see more and more of the deeper wrecks there. The mines, they're incredible. It's definitely challenging again, just the cold makes everything so much harder. Like, props to everybody in Finland scootering in a loitokari, if you know what I mean, right? The full rubber suit with like mittens. Seriously.
Is that like the 3-finger
mittens? No, you have your thumb, that's it. It's right. A mitten. Yeah. So hats off to some of my friends who recently, within the past year or so, did their DPV training in this. I mean, God. But yeah, no, I gradually started diving more and more in the mines there. Obviously, the equipment you need in terms of heating and exposure protection is totally different. Run times are very, very different. Profiles are very different. Here in Mexico, I am going to sound, I recently said this to somebody. I was like, I indeed am now one of those obnoxious humans who is like, on a day off, it's not worth getting in the water if it's less than like 3 to 4 hours. But in Finland, a lot of times, 2 hours and you're like, I'm done, In mines, the profiles are in a way, the depth is a challenging thing, right? And if you think about it, you're in a mine, you're at like 50 or 60 meters, whatever, in you go. Something happens, it's a cold, long way back.
Are you saying 50 meters, like, well, obviously...
Depth,
okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming there's quite a good amount of penetration in?
Yeah, there's definitely, you can go quite far. It's not like in Mexico, you can just go forever, right? It's very different. And a lot of times in the mines, the dive times are limited, so you're allowed a maximum run time of 2 hours or like 2.5 or so, something like this, just because it's a matter of safety, right? The depth and the cold makes it challenging, but they're so cool. In Ojamo, for instance, which is sadly closed at the moment, the mining holes, once again, it's that feeling of being so small and insignificant. You look down and there's nothing. It's just darkness. It's very, very cool. And I do hope to go back next summer, or I am going back next summer, and I am hoping to go to Sweden as well to see some of the mines there. So hopefully that will happen.
The mines in Finland, are they pretty close to where you grew up?
No, I grew up on the west coast near the Swedish border. The mines are down south, the ones we dive. Where I stay now in the summer, Ojamo is like a 45-minute drive away. Montala, which is another popular site, is like 2.5 hours or so.
Okay.
It's like a long weekend to go there.
So I'm curious because you left Finland, you became a diver, and then going back to Finland, did you have friends that eventually went down that path, or have you made other friends within Finland or Finnish? Is that right? Is that how
Finnish,
I say it?
Yeah.
That are Finnish Like any of the friends that you grew up with, did they become divers and are kind of on the same path, or
definitely not?
You've just met people that, oh, you're from Finland, I'm from Finland, let's be friends.
Yeah, it's really funny. So obviously, a lot of Finnish people have the same dream I had, which is getting the heck out of there. And you do meet a lot of Finns working in the dive industry around the world. I have met some Finnish people here and there. When I went back for the first time, I think I messaged somebody who I knew through a friend, like a friend of a friend, and was like, hey, I'm going to Finland, like, what's the diving situation? Who should I talk to? And then I joined a dive club, because that's, the diving in Finland is club based, right? Like all the dive clubs, they'll have a boat, and, you pay your membership fee, and there's like a small fee to, pay for fuel and stuff on the boat, and then if you do trips and stuff like this, and then that's how I met them. And yeah, once they got over all of my weird habits of accumulated throughout my extended periods of living abroad, they were like, yeah, you're all right, and I've just kind of made friends along the way. Yeah, it's really cool. I've met some really, really cool people who have, they dive in Finland, right? And then they go to the Red Sea. So it goes off on a little bit of a tangent, but I think if I started diving in Finland, I don't think I would be diving anymore, just because all the cool stuff is deep. And all the cool stuff, like the progression to start diving in Finland to like where you get to a point where you're gonna need or you're gonna want a rebreather and all of these things, like you get to that point very quickly. I don't think you can't say that, right? Because it was my journey and it is what it is. But in a way, I wasted so many years floating around in the whatever, like 25-degree water somewhere in there, right? Like these guys, like they'll go out, they do their open water, and then immediately they go to doubles, and then. But yeah, in Finland, there is absolutely nothing to see in the shallows. It's a fish, and that's it. Like, had I done some sort of discover or an open water course in Finland, I would definitely not be diving anymore, because it's just an effort and a half to go diving, and then you see nothing.
I'm actually curious, because you say it's an effort and a half to go diving, but I'm sure getting prepped for a cave is not the easiest thing to do in the world.
Well, it takes time and effort to get to that point where you can safely go into the overhead. And then, at that point, you've already accumulated all the gear. So at that point, you just toss them in a crate and go, right? In Finland, now it's like, everybody has you have to have so much stuff. Everybody has their, own dive shop. I don't even... everybody has their own analyzers for helium, and, a lot of the clubs, though, they'll have a compressor, but people have big tanks for banks and things like this. They'll have transfer whips, and I'm just like, what? And yeah, if you want to go diving, then it's you haul all of that shit, and you have to put on all of these undergarments, and it's a pain in the ass. Yeah, but it's worth it once you get to that point where you can do the deeper wrecks or you can do the mines.
Yeah. I'm just actually really curious. So what did the first time you got into a dry suit, was that in the warm weather environments, or was it like when you knew you were going to cold weather environments?
Yeah, I wanted to go to God's Pocket, because a diver, later he became a friend, but yeah, he was a customer in Grand Cayman, and he lived in Courtenay in Vancouver Island. He was like, oh, God's Pocket, it's spectacular, you have to go. And then he talked about it, and then I was like, yeah, it sounds amazing. Yeah, I should go. All right, cool. It's not, you don't do this in a wetsuit, eh? No, alrighty. And I flew to Vancouver Island, and I met up with my friend who lived there, and he had a boat, and he took me out on his boat, and then we went wreck diving.
First time I was in a dry suit, I was working in Texas. Winter comes, it starts getting cold. People are like, you need a dry suit, and I'm like, well, shit, what's this dry suit thing about? All right. And
what's the temperature at that point?
In Fahrenheit, the water can drop down to the high mid 40s, 50s in Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, sorry. air temperature can be like in the 30s Fahrenheit. So it's pretty cold. I think that's like around 0 Celsius.
Chilly.
So, and we're in the lake all the time, and, you know, it's either put the wetsuit on. I think my biggest motivation was because it's not so bad, like in that temperature water, it's not so bad when you're in the water in a 7 mil. It's when you get out and then you have to get out of it and that wind is whipping. You're like, this is miserable. But I had a coworker, he was selling a dry suit, and I was like, oh, I'm going to buy it. It was a big, heavy duty, just thick neoprene commercial diving suit. And I was like, I'll buy that. And then my other buddy snaked it from me. He ended up buying it, and I was like, damn it, this sucks. Ended up finding a really good deal on Craigslist. And yeah, my first time in a dry suit was like, yeah, you connect this
Right.
this is how you add gas, this is how you get rid of gas. If it gets too tight, just hit this button right here. So, my last question for you before I let you go. I am somebody that wants to get into overhead diving. What is the best piece of advice you could give to that person?
Come to Mexico. No, seriously, come to Mexico. Because the training environment here is ideal in that way where we have, the water is not freezing cold, right? So we can spend a lot of time in the water, which you have to do. You have to be able to develop that foundation, the foundational skills, the platform, to be able to safely go into the overhead. You have to spend a lot of time in the water, right? So here, it's warm, it's shallow, we can do that, right? It's fresh water, it is very unforgiving. Shallow, fresh water is where it's at, is hardest. I'm sure you remember we are going to level off at 4.3 meters, right?
How can I forget?
Yeah, forever haunt you.
In Ponderosa.
Oh, good times. I feel like there's like milestones for me where I'm like, oh, okay, this is where I learned how to teach and this and that. But in Mexico is where I have really been able to, like, I've been really challenged by the environment and have really been able to refine my control in the water. And it's the same for everybody else, honestly, in my opinion.
Wonderful words of advice. And so if you're listening, make your way to Mexico, make your way to Under the Jungle, and ask for Arya. Arya, I really, really appreciate you coming onto the podcast today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tolerating my awkwardness. I tried my best, and I think we made it work. Thank you so much. And yeah, it has been a pleasure diving with you, and I hope to do more diving with you in the future, maybe in your neck of the woods.
Off-gassing, a scuba podcast.